Hello everyone! In this video, I'll go over all the encounters in the King's Full Raid and explain how to complete them. Getting right into it, I will start at the entrance encounter. This technically isn't an encounter, but it has mechanics, so we'll go over them. There will be a set of relics that spawns inside the encounter, first near where you spawn in, and then further and further away each time. You need to have 2 guardians grab a relic each, and bring them to the statues in the middle, depositing them in the current active one. You want to grab the relics at the same time as they're on a shared timer, and you also want to deposit them at the same time, as the timer will go down significantly on the second relic once the first is deposited. Enemies will spawn in the room next to the depositing statues you will need to clear out, as well as having enemies spawn throughout the rooms where the relics will spawn. When the relics are picked up, some taken walls will also spawn in a few locations, blocking the runners from progressing. Someone will have to accompany the runners to shoot down these walls and get rid of enemies in the way, while others are clearing the depositing room of enemies and more taken walls. A few things to keep in mind is that you can use your ghost to reveal a platform under one of the relics, and that as soon as you pick up a relic, you lose your ability to double jump. With floating relics without a platform, you will need to use your momentum to save yourself after a grab. Also, if you fail to deposit a set of relics, their timer will begin as soon as they respawn. So if you're not ready to grab them straight away, it may be a good idea to wait until they de and respawn again to reset their timer. Deposit all 6 sets of relics and kill a couple of ads that spawn to open the way forward. Onto the first official encounter, we have Totems. For this encounter you will need ad clear weapons, something to deal with some tougher knights, and also a way to stun unstoppable champions. There is a main room where ads will keep spawning, including the champions mentioned, with a plate in the middle. There are also 2 side rooms of Annihilator Totems that are filled with a damaging aura. Your goal is to stand under the Annihilator Totems to stop them from wiping you, gathering up Death Singer's power stacks while you are there, and then depositing them in the plate in the middle to start opening the door. To do this, you'll want to split yourself into 2 teams of 3, one team handling each side of the room while sharing the middle. At the entrance of each side room you will find a brand, and when you pick it up, it'll give you a 30-second aura. This aura will protect you and anyone near you from the damage in the totem rooms. Grab the brand, run inside, and stand under the totem to stop the wipe mechanic. While you are carrying the brand, every enemy you kill will give you stacks of Death Singer's power. You will need these to open the doors to get as many as you can. When your 30-second timer runs out, you will die, so you need someone to steal the brand from you to stop this from happening. The 2 remaining players for each team will be in charge of clearing out enemies and also for removing the brand from their teammates. On the platform in the main room, a wizard will spawn, and once it dies, a blight guard will spawn. This taken knight will drop a brand claimer that you can collect. When you have the brand claimer, run to your teammate who is under the Annihilator Totem. The damaging aura will damage you, but it won't kill you. When you get close to the brand holder, you will get a prompt to steal the brand, which will give the brand to you, resetting the timer. The original brand holder is now free of the brand and can return to the middle of the room with their stacks of Death Singer's power, while the new brand holder stands underneath the totem. To deposit the stacks, you have to stand on the plate in the middle of the room, which will slowly drain them away and begin opening a door. Make sure to fully drain all your stacks before you leave, as you cannot do the other rolls while you have stacks. While the stacks are draining, the 3rd person on each side will be busy getting the next brand claimer to swap with the current brand holder again, a cycle which then repeats until the door opens. Deposit enough stacks of Death Singer's power to open the door and complete the encounter. Next up, we have the Warpriest encounter. For this, you will need ad clear weapons, a way to quickly melt through knights, and DPS weapons for a boss that likes to move around. This room has 3 main areas: an up high left area, a down low middle area, and then an intermediate right area. Each of these sections will have a plate in them, and there are 3 obelisks in the middle of the room, each one representing a plate. Split up the team to have 2 people in each area. To start this encounter, have someone stand on each plate, causing the Warpriest to spawn in a stage area. Ads will spawn on every level, which you will need to clear out, and there will be some enemies you can finish for heavy with Aeons if you're worried about ammo. The final wave of ads in each section will have a yellow bar knight, and once you kill the final one, the next phase will begin. The middle plate will activate, and someone has to stand on it for the reading phase to begin. When you step on the plate, the back of one of the obelisks will light up white, but only you can see this as the person on the plate. It can be any of the 3 obelisks, so if neither appears to be glowing white, that means it's the middle one, as you cannot see it from your position. Whichever plate is on the side of the glowing obelisk will be the first in the sequence, so call out the location and then get off your plate in the middle. There will be a prompt that the glyph sequence has now begun, and whichever plate was first in the sequence now has to be stepped on. When the first plate is stepped on, another obelisk will begin glowing, indicating the second plate into the sequence. Step onto that plate, and then the final plate. Make sure to not get off your plates until the final one has been stepped on. This will begin the DPS phase of the encounter, with whoever stepped on the last plate getting a brand the Initiate aura. To damage the boss, the team needs to be inside this aura, so everyone has to group up around the holder. This brand aura has another timer though, and once it hits 0, the brand holder will die from it, ending the DPS phase. To save the holder and extend your DPS phase, you need to locate a knight that spawns close to one of the 3 plate areas and quickly kill it. It'll drop the same brand claimer as the Totems encounter, which can be used to steal the brand, extending the timer and saving the previous holder. There will be 2 knights that spawn during each DPS phase, so you can transfer the brand twice. I highly recommend dedicating 2 people to finding these knights in time to avoid confusion and making sure that everyone else can do as much DPS as possible. After you've transferred the brand twice and the timer runs out, the Warpriest will send out an attack that kills anyone not hiding behind one of the 3 obelisks. Whichever obelisk has people hiding behind it will disintegrate, so you cannot use it again as a hiding spot. For this reason, make sure to pick an obelisk and hide there together. You get a maximum of 4 DPS phases with 3 obelisks and then 1 more phase before he wipes you, so do not waste obelisks by splitting up to hide behind different ones, as he will take any with people behind them. The encounter now resets and you go again. When an obelisk is destroyed, a floating light will take its place when it is time to do the plate reading, and once the Warpriest is below 50% in his health, the enemies in the room will swap from Hive to Taken. Apart from that, it's the same each time. Keep repeating the steps until the Warpriest is no more, and you can move on to the next encounter. We are onto the Golgoroth encounter. For this encounter, you will need add clear weapons, weapons to shoot the crit spot on the boss's chest at mostly medium to close range, and some people will need a weapon to shoot the boss's back like a linear fusion rifle or heavy machine gun, as well as something to shoot swarms of axiom darts. This encounter has a large pit in the middle with higher areas all around the edge. There will be an orb hanging above the middle of this pit, and the encounter will begin once you shoot this orb down. You will have to clear the room of adds, and once you do, another orb will spawn on the roof above the left side of the pit, indicating you can start damage phase. You will want to have 2 people dedicate themselves to Golgoroth to extend the damage phase, while the other 4 people focus on DPS. For DPS, the team will want to shoot the glowing orb off the roof and stand in the puddle it makes on the ground to significantly increase their damage, aiming at Golgoroth's chest to hit the crit spot. In the meantime, one of the people who is on Team Golgoroth will need to shoot the boss in the glowing crit spot on his back to get his gaze, which will cause a few things to happen. The boss will become vulnerable, Golgoroth will constantly face whoever has his gaze, and he will shoot axiom darts at the person with the gaze, which will damage and poison you if they hit. You will want to hit the crit spot on the back to get his gaze and shoot down the orb on the ceiling at approximately the same time. Now because Golgoroth is always facing the gaze holder, this player will want to position themselves so that the rest of the team is between them and the ogre, giving the team the best possible angle of his chest crit spot. The gaze holder will have a timer, and before this timer hits 0, the other gaze team member will need to shoot Golgoroth in his back crit spot to swap the gaze onto them. This will refresh the timer and extend your DPS phase. Around this time, another orb will also spawn on the ceiling for the DPS team to shoot down and move to, as each orb buff pool doesn't last for very long, so each time the gaze is swapped, you want to move to the new orb spot that has spawned. There are a total of 6 orbs that will spawn per DPS phase, and you want to use as many as possible, as for every orb you don't shoot down, the totems at the back will start filling up. Fail to use 6 orbs across your DPS phases, and you will wipe. During DPS phase, one random player will also become affected by the Unstable Light debuff, approximately once per orb spawn. This debuff will have an audible cue that keeps getting louder, and it makes the edges of your screen turn green. When this debuff reaches 0, you will do massive damage in a radius around you, so make sure to move away from your team as it will instant kill anyone near you. It also damages the boss though, so go stand next to him if you can. Repeat everything until the boss is dead and the encounter is complete. We are now onto the Daughters encounter. For this, it's add clear including some knights, arc shields and snipers, as well as weapons to melt the bosses with. Rockets like Warcliffe Coil and Gallahorn work really well, but linear fusion rifles also do the job. Divinity is also not a bad option here. For this encounter, dedicate 1 player to each of the plates in the room, with 1 player roaming between each pair of plates. We personally call the plates closest to the entrance left 1 and right 1, with the further back ones being left 2 and right 2. But whatever callouts you end up using, make sure the whole team is on the same page. You will have 2 minutes to do a full cycle of mechanics and DPS, with every kill slightly extending the timer. One random plate will be glowing green and have a knight spawn on top of it. Whoever is in charge of that plate needs to kill the knight and jump up. From here, you should be able to see a glowing orb floating above one of the other plates. Someone needs to jump up onto the other plate of the orb above it, while the first person also stays on their plate to form platforms up to the orb. If you get off the plate too early or someone jumps up onto the wrong plate, it will ignite the plates and make the platforms disappear, so you need to get off and back on onto the correct ones. When the first platform is stepped on, a random person will also become torn. You will basically look like a spirit and cannot shoot or use abilities. You will need to parkour up the platforms made by standing on the correct plates and run through the orb up top to collect it. If you're the torn runner, make sure to go to the plate that lit up initially as your starting point. Once you've done a full cycle of stepping on the plates, it'll happen again of randomized plates and a new random torn person. This will happen until 3 people have been torn and have successfully grabbed the orb up top. The final person will have to hold interact on the orb to collect it instead of just running through, as now the next phase begins. After grabbing the orb, jump down to the daughters and dunk your orb on the daughter that is shooting at you. This makes her vulnerable and gives you an immortality aura to protect you from the arena wiping mechanic that happens when the timer hits 0. Group up with everyone and shoot the daughter you dunked on to deal damage, making sure to stay together until the timer has hit 0 and the wipe has passed. The active daughter will now swap and you repeat the encounter. One thing to keep in mind is that if you kill one of the daughters, you will have to kill the other in your next DPS phase, otherwise it will be a team wipe. And that is how you complete the daughters encounter. Now we are onto the big guy himself, Oryx. You will need ad clear weapons, something to quickly kill ogres and knights with, and then DPS weapons to hit Oryx's chest crit spot like linear fusions. Just like the previous encounter, spread yourself around the room with 1 person per plate and 1 roamer between every 2 plates. Each plate will have a knight on it you first need to get rid of, and shortly after Oryx will move to a random plate. He will slam his fist onto the plate, after which it will turn green, and a cycle like the daughter's encounter commences. Find a plate at the green ring, jump on it, someone gets torn, find where the floaty orb is, stand on the plate it's above, and have the torn person parkour up the platforms that appear to get to the orb. This also has to happen 3 times like in Daughters. Now the big difference with this encounter is that shortly after Oryx slams the plate, ogres will appear. 1 will spawn per plate, starting counterclockwise from where Oryx slammed the plate. This ogre will drop a bomb when killed, which you do not want to touch yet, and it will also spawn a knight by the neighboring plate. For example, if the ogre spawns on R1, the matching knight will spawn on L1 once it is killed. This knight will head towards the bomb that was dropped by the ogre that spawned it and try to devour it, which you want to avoid. Do the 3 sets of torn parkour, kill all the ogres and knights, and it's time for the next phase. Just like Daughters, the final person will need to interact with the orb to pick it up, but this time while the final parkour is happening, a knight with an immortality aura around it will spawn into the arena. The person who did the final parkour will need to dunk their orb buff onto the knight to make it vulnerable, kill it, and then wait in the center of the room between the 2 platforms the Daughters were on. When the dunk on the knight happens, Oryx will move in to slam his fist onto the plate again. A message saying that Oryx calls upon the darkness will appear, and when this happens, you will want to have 1 person standing next to each bomb. When his fist hits the plate, everyone needs to run into their bombs at the same time to begin detonating them. It takes a few seconds to activate a bomb, so wait until it shows a message saying your name has detonated a corrupted light, and then book it to the middle where your friend who dunked on the knight should be waiting with an immortality aura. If you are outside of this aura when a bomb goes off, you are dead, so you want to detonate them at the same time to make sure everyone can make it. What these bombs did is stun Oryx, as the message of him calling upon the darkness was him starting his wipe mechanic. If you are too slow detonating your bombs, or were too slow doing the torn parkour so you weren't ready to detonate yet, then Oryx will wipe you. However, if you got the bombs off successfully, then Oryx will now be stunned and you can DPS his chest. The DPS phase will last longer depending on how many bombs you detonated, but if you miss activating a bomb, you can protect it from the knights to use it the next DPS phase. Keep DPSing Oryx until he goes immune, and now Oryx will unleash 1 of 2 possible attacks on you. The first is the Thunderdome, where he will summon a huge blight in the area where Oryx spawns into the encounter. 1 by 1, he'll begin teleporting guardians inside of the blight, where you will fight the Shade of Oryx. This Shade needs to be killed before everyone is in there for too long, or it will wipe you. While this is happening, players on the outside can kill thrall that are approaching the blight to stop them from getting in and interfering with the people who are already inside. Also, do not touch the giant blight, as it will kill you. Kill the Shade to be let out and the encounter repeats. The other attack he can do is summon explosions onto you. If it's the explosion attack, the knights will spawn back onto the plates right after a DPS phase as an early warning sign, and soon after, Oryx will fly out and away from the arena to cast the attack. Here you either need to keep running to avoid the detonations until Oryx stops his attacks, make sure to stay away from teammates during this, or you can kill all of the 4 knights to stop the attack early. Once you have survived his attack, the encounter resets and you have to repeat it all to get back to a DPS phase. You have 4 phases total to get him to his final stand. For final stand, Oryx will go back to where he spawned into the encounter, which is the furthest end in the room from where you came in. 2 ogres will spawn in their usual spot on the side of the room Oryx is on, which you need to quickly kill. Keep most of your team grouped up in front of Oryx, as one person will still have the immortality aura for everyone to group up in, while one person goes to stand next to a bomb. When the Oryx calls upon the darkness message appears, this one person needs to activate the bomb next to them before running back to their team to not die to the explosion. This allows you to damage Oryx just like a normal DPS phase. However, you will quickly want to have someone wait next to the second bomb, as it won't be too long before Oryx calls the darkness again, and you need to detonate the second bomb to stop him from wiping you and to extend the DPS phase. You get no benefit from detonating both bombs at once, so make sure to do them one at a time. He will call the darkness for a 3rd time now, but with no more bombs to stop him, you will have to bring him down before he successfully casts it. Get his health to 0 before this happens, and you will have beaten the King's Full raid. And that is all for now. I hope this was useful. If that is for the channel, make sure to check out links in the description below. Have a great day everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!